is not flowing the way I wanted it to flow. Because I'm putting together about 4 or 5 different people's investigations of stuff here. So what we have is as you know, there was concern at our last board meeting expressed about people accessing student records, BIC, Infinite Campus, online records, because you could see in the directory in Google Apps, you could see a drop-down, you could see student numbers. And if you knew the student number, and if you knew some other information about the student, like the birth date or something, you could try to hack their account, their Infinite Campus account, from their mail directory. Can only occur if you know more information, probably, than I would know from casual conversation. What we pieced together, so that was expressed at the board meeting by some parents. Made a statement to one of our teachers in that that he could access the system without the information. And this is Dwayne Mayo, who he talked to, one of our teachers, and Dwayne had said, I reminded him that doing so was illegal. At this point, the conversation sort of turned ugly, and I excused myself from his rantings. There was some sort of, there was a lot of acrimony in the air about that. We looked into it the next day, and we started pulling IP addresses to see if there was, in fact, a security breach. It appears, from what we found, that the only IP address hitting other accounts multiple times and accessing other students' So, we have a variety of information here, and I was trying to sort all of this out here because it was a mess. Because I gathered it from a variety of people that were working on this. Chris Mack was lead among them.
And that's your IT person?
Yeah.
Okay.
The head of IT. He was lead in pulling out the IP addresses. Basically, he ran his query against the machine, against the computer, to see which IP addresses had accessed overall from different, and who had accessed multiple accounts from the same IP. Well, it comes down to be, looks he accessed, it appears that 3 other students' accounts were accessed from within his IP address. We called all 3. Her son's accounts had been accessed by somebody else and was unaware of said access. She didn't have a clue as to why he would be accessed. And I believe that access, from what we can tell, that access occurred at 11:30. The 2:12 p.m. I have not been able to ascertain where it was the last day of school. She exited school, Mom said, about noon. Didn't know where she went. We also have indications that the devices to access all 3 accounts were not all mobile devices. So she says, it looks like from this that she could well have, it looks like it was a different MAC address you know, the ID number for a computer.
For the device.
Yeah, the device ID. It looks like it was a different ID device that normally accesses that machine out of the Arahi. From his IP address, a lot of these devices are the same, but then
Okay.
it shows up as like a Samsung mobile device was accessing it all of a sudden. It was her that did it. Could well be true. She was at somebody else and hitting a hotspot, and was at that house and hit the hotspot for the Wi-Fi and used it. Demonstrate that. We're not seeing that. So our concern is that our accounts were accessed. We understand he made his concerns public, but that didn't give him the wherewithal to access them. You know what I mean? If you find the security fault, just because I find DoD's fault, I shouldn't go in and launch the nukes just to see, you know, board games. Right,
absolutely.
So that was sort of where we are. There is 2 of the students live in close proximity.
Where does he live?
He lives, and that was part of our investigation. He is that address in there. So he's in the county, and that's why when we contacted Dennis, this is part of, you know, the concern of, well, okay, it was a computer crime, perhaps.
Maybe. Right.
But whose turf it is, as far as you know, it was our servers that were accessed.
It can go either way, in my opinion. You know, so county could take it, we could take it. That's not the big issue. Can you determine what information he accessed, or if he was able to gain access? Not
he gained access. I mean, he gained access to, and it was allowed in. You can tell. Here's sort of a. If you look at this one, when we figured out, you can see success.
Okay. Yes.
And then you can see all of a sudden no. This is at that point that morning on the 25th. When we determined that IP address was accessing other students' records, and we blocked that IP address.
Okay.
And then ping, 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 you can see 3 pings at 914, 917, 919, and all of a sudden that IP address figured out he was being blocked.
Right.
Because we can block an IP coming in. And so we set up a wall specifically at that IP because we couldn't figure out why that IP address was accessing other students' records.
Gotcha. And has your IT guy been since then? When did all this come up? Today?
That was the 25th, 26th, so we've been working at this over the last 2 days to try to figure out exactly what the extent of and what is the information we have and what can we reasonably try to put together with what we have.
And what has your IT guy been continually monitoring the same stuff to determine whether or not he changed locations or access points?
No, he has not changed locations or access points from what we can tell. We did get an email from him inquiring. I'd have to look at the date of the email. It just got forwarded into me.
Tom, go ahead.
It's going to take a second. But we got an email from the campus stuff.
Because he's been blocked.
I think because he's getting pinged with no trespasses. He's getting the old 404 domain name server.
Right.
So that is what showed up. It's one of those investigations that
now, is Chris around?
let me see if he's still here.
clearing a record for your plate.
Okay, it's a red expedition.
I copy.
Your call is being forwarded to a short-held voicemail system.
No. And he is probably gone for the day. He didn't know you guys were coming.
Right, right. Well, apparently Denny can't come until Friday.
Yeah, I know.
You know, something like that.
Well, with the president coming in.
Yeah, he's
everybody's
got
on
other
there.
stuff. Okay.
This is the one from Mr. Hay, who's asking us most of our kids' Google accounts and access to Infinite Campus. When we first learned of the breach or the possibility of a breach occurring in this sort of situation, we locked them down and we shut them out. And that's when we did an investigation and we said, okay, is there anybody who has pinged multiple accounts from the same IP address? And his account was the one that showed up.
The only one that showed up.
Well, the only one that we can place that had repeated hits at somebody else's.
Okay.
You know, every so often you'll find kids accessing from a mobile hotspot another account or things like
and that's
that.
one thing we got to determine that
Yeah.
didn't happen with the two. We know one did. Now there's two other unknowns.
Right.
So
there's two other unknowns here, and that has been the crux of where we're at is, you know, one, it's an adult behavior, not a kid behavior.
You're surprised. Well, maybe you wouldn't. So.
It's apparently an adult behavior. The parents of two of the three kids are unaware of any access to their kids' account. She hasn't called me. She was supposed to call me today.
Okay.
Because I talked to her Wednesday as well, I think it was, and said, hey, what do you know about this? Her concern went immediately to the mom's concern of, you know, hey, help me. Do I need to be concerned that somebody's stalking my daughter? And I said, I don't have an indication of a stalker. I have an indication that somebody's illegally accessing accounts. If it's being done for nefarious purposes, I have no idea.
Right.
You know, I can't read intent into it.
No, maybe we can't leave, but
I mean, it could just be
proving a point.
Proving a point, which, okay.
It's the wrong way to do it.
Now we just locked down every account in the district. So every parent in the district, we've pretty much locked out every kid in the district.
Oh wow. I'm surprised.
Until we could sort out
Absolutely.
how what was being done and how it was being done. And this comes to be the sole concern right now is what was he doing? What was that IP address doing, accessing other records?
Right. Okay. Well, if you want, I'll take it and run with it. You know, until Denny gets back.
I didn't know how you wanted to.
It's entirely up to you. You know, because when it comes down to it, you know, it's in your hands. You know, on how you want to proceed with this. So.
Right. Well, and that's going to be beyond just my determination. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's going to be something.
But as far as like the investigation goes, do you want? I mean, we'll more than help. Eventually, whatever I do will be handed over to Dennis.
Right.
To Denny, you know. So.
Right. I don't know how far you're going to get.
I might get some answers to some questions over the weekend.
Yeah.
You know. We'll determine that. I definitely need Chris. I'll probably have to have our IT come down and talk to his IT guy.
Yeah.
You know.
He'll be back on Monday. I think he's slated to come back on Monday.
Is Monday a holiday?
Or Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tuesday. I guess some people
Which
won't
I won't be back until, because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are my day off, which puts me back to Friday.
Right.
So I can see what I can handle this weekend. You know, really Sunday and Monday. You know, with contacting parents or.
Right. Now, did you need?
I would need.
Female attempted to push two carts out of the store. Suspects are going into the back of the Culver's parking lot.
Let me get.
2 out of 41. How are you?
Luckily, the rest of us don't have IT access.
Mm-hmm.
3 out of 31, you can disregard 2 out of 41. I'll be closer.
Copy all 3 en route.
So what makes you ride along, Mr. Cooper?
Just getting some better knowledge of how our department runs. So Friday afternoon seemed like the best time to do that.
You would be surprised. Sometimes some of my busiest nights were like Tuesdays or Thursdays. You know, I could have nothing happen all weekend, but then I could be hammered on a Thursday night. Mother's Day weekend was ridiculous.
No kidding.
It was crazy busy.
Nothing brings about fun.
I figure you throw a trustee in the officer's car, it should spice things up a little bit.
You probably, you know.
And on this day, they did pass the final point of sale. The male suspect may also have on a sky blue sweater.
What's interesting about this too is that once you know we didn't see, what's weird is you don't see the boy's information being accessed, you see her information being accessed. Which, okay, like that. Is it because she's friends with the 2 daughters of Mom did not immediately know why her daughter's information would have been accessed from another location.
Other than it being the last day of school and wanting to check grades or something like that.
Could be, but the device wasn't a different device. It was one of the regular home devices.
If they were over there.
Could be sitting there at the computer.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah,
knows.
and that's the big problem with computer crimes,
Well,
because not only do I have, I mean, I could bring all the information back to an address or a device, but I have to be able to say who was accessing that device.
Who was accessing that device?
Who was
at
on
that
the
time.
keyboard, yeah. And that's the biggest problem with computer crimes.
Yeah.
You
No,
know.
I understand that. I mean, it's the difference between a 14-year-old looking at stuff and
And
a 24-year-old.
exactly.
We've got a whole level of felony.
Yeah.
There are
Okay.
all the people involved, the 2
Okay,
kiddos.
so
That is there.
now who's
Could be mom, could be
dad?
dad. Yeah, there's other ones that, you know, you run across that sort of show weird pings, but nothing like this one.
Nothing secret anymore. And so these access ID numbers are associated with individual students?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so
that would have been,
who is...
okay, so 212 is...
that's the time frame.
Okay.
This is kids. Now access ID. And who would be the 336?
Those on separate sheets, and so many people, and 3 or 4 people
Oh, no
are
worries.
looking at this stuff.
Cottage, assisted living, first person to jump off of the roof, also no weapons, any further.
That's gonna follow. Could you ask Karen to come down here for a second? Just any other records that she may have? Yes.
This one would be... Okay, so the user ID that would be the individual user, correct? Is to an individual person.
That would probably be true. Yes, I think that would relate to the specific student's user.
Right, like whether, like that could be mom's user ID number or dad's or student's.
Those are all kid user ID numbers, not parental IDs. Because
Okay.
I would have one and my son would have one.
Right. How can I, so access ID, where do we get that information from?
Okay, that's a Chris Mack question.
Okay. So basically what I'm trying to determine is what is an access ID and what is a user ID.
Let me get, once Karen was down here, because she heard Chris's part of that explanation.
Okay.
That was one of those.
And do you have an email that he originally stated that he could access the...
Well, in his, this was what he had told a staff member that night. And he supposedly had showed somebody else at the board meeting that he could just go into a student's number and access student's ID and access their information. As you go to a Google directory, you know, as you hit directory in that, and it drops down for the directory, the students did have ID numbers next to their name, for R. Foster.
Okay.
But that was cut. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Thanks. Brofft is. She just started that 2 seconds ago.
Okay. Can I keep this one?
Yeah, I got a copy of that. It was off my, I think that was off my email, right?
Yes.
The staff member sent it to me because he was a little concerned.
Yes. Okay.
As you know, we had called back after that meeting anyway.
And which...
Because there was some concern with behavior.
And
but what she stated, she had sort of put her understanding of things thus far.
Update on your call. Subject may, it looks like the suspect actually got into a vehicle. It's going to be a white Honda, bearing license 744 Zebra Frank X-ray. Vehicle has tinted windows with a white decal sticker. Direction of travel was southbound on Meridian. 341 copy.
31 copy.
1605.
Now, I think I may have an access on this one to your question on numbers.
okay. I'm seeing how it relates to this report here.
Yep, there you go.
So,
Username 900 2549 is.
So,
13775.
That's pulled off oh gosh, I'm trying to remember where the other data field I see that. That's pulled off of on there, that other IC that I gave you,
Okay.
that IC number 1 sheet. There's
Oh.
a student ID number on there.
Okay.
This is sort of a mess, and it's trying to organize all this stuff.
Yeah, and so this is so basically saying the kids access this.
Well, that's their user number,
That's their user number.
which would have been what was derived from the drop-down in a directory.
Can you show me that, or is it gone?
It may be gone entirely. I think that's gone entirely. I don't think, I'll be honest, I never, until somebody actually pointed it out and said, look what you can find in directory, I went, no, I never looked at kids in the directory, I never looked at kids.
Right.
I've always gone to, I've always done IC because I can access everything. Why would I?
Why would you
Yeah.
need to go to? So it's on the district's website
Yeah.
that you can access. Huh.
You could access until you shut it down.
Well, find out individual student ID numbers.
Yep. See, on this one, now we're down to just staff members.
Gotcha.
332, 311, on scene stating deputies can cancel your discretion.
Okay.
So
So these other reports were generated by Chris?
yeah.
Okay. Can I get Chris's information also?
It's Chris Mack.
Matt?
Mack.
M-A-C?
M-A-C-K.
Okay. And is it Chris or Christopher?
I never called him Christopher.
Oh.
I don't think I've ever called him Christopher.
Alright. What's his contact information?
I put down, do you want just the work contact?
Yeah, that's fine for now.
This address, 488-4700.
Okay. And he is your IT director?
He is the IT director, yes.
Okay.
The problem is we had multiple people checking and double checking. And somebody made double copies.
No worries.
That's 3. So I've been trying to sort that out for 10 minutes. These are people we had attempted at first to figure out who might be multiple accessing and blown it. And we only had a list, that small a list of people who locked themselves out of their passwords.
Gotcha.
So, which is pretty small compared to the
Right.
size of, you know, with 5,000 kids, that's amazing that only that many locked themselves out in the last 50 years.
So,
David 4, checking status.
I think this is Mac's IP search. I'll run you a copy of that one.
yes, please.
That's just who is who, and